Hey guys, I'm Natalie.
I'm Ansley.
And this is our mukbang. That's when you eat dinner with your audience. And we're having spaghetti tonight. Please join us. Okay, so today we're going to
be talking about 3 of the 8 Beatitudes listed in the Bible.
Yeah, so this is our first week of a 3-week study with Scott. We're doing the first week, and we just wanted to start off with like a story and like a little intro. So we're going to be in Matthew 5, and so the intro that the guy gave us, he went into this really, really funny story of where there was translations in the Bible from English to Greek, right?
And so he knew his friend, and his friend was a Mennonite.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know, they're pretty, very
Christian Amish.
Yeah. And so he didn't have many rules, as you would think a Mennonite would have, except there was one, and it was the boys and girls were not allowed to swim together.
Yeah, and that was because when in Germany there were Mennonites who started studying the Bible, and kind of the first Mennonites, I think, and they really wanted to do the English version of the Bible. And their one leader had just started learning English, so he knew, but he wasn't very good. And when it says, when James says in the book, they have very diverse temptations, he read it as divers temptations. So he kind of thought that they only had temptations during swimming, so they couldn't swim together
when they dove.
Yeah, so it's really important to know the wording of the Bible. That's kind of what we're getting at with this story. And we wish that our Bible came with pronunciations and a grammar guide, not just because the cities and names are hard enough, but because of some of the words, and we're going to dive into that today.
So back when the Bible was being translated into hundreds of different languages, a lot of the words were kind of lost in translations. We don't necessarily have all the words that the original language had, so some things kind of get screwed up, and one of the words we're going to focus on is blessed, not blessed, but blessed.
Yeah, and blessed, or blessed, came from a Greek word that means praised or blessed. And then when we read blessed, it would mean a Greek word that is closest translation would be oh so happy, or happy condition, or a person characterized by happiness. So let's keep that in mind when we read our first text.
Step break. So this is Matthew 5, 1 through 5. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." And those are the first 3 Beatitudes that we're going to be studying today.
Yeah, and so that was Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And to transition into the next thing we're going to talk about is, you guys understand, if you are in school, how important that first class and the first day of school is. And it might not seem that important because you're like, oh my gosh, this is the first day of school, woo, gotta get my outfit, stuff like that. And you think it's important with the students, but it is your first impression to the teacher and of the teacher. And when you hear the teacher speak, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I hate this. And I have a personal story that on the first day of school, I wore a shirt that showed my shoulders a little bit. And so I went into my study hall, and my study hall teacher looked at me and she says, "That shirt is not school appropriate." And I said, "No, it is not." And then I sat down, and I haven't spoken to her since, but not on my, not on purpose at study hall. But I didn't really like my first impression of that teacher. So I kind of didn't really enjoy going to study hall.
So this applies to everyone. Everyone has first impressions, and the first impression is so important. And when Jesus did his Sermon on the Mount, that's where he gave us all the Beatitudes. And this is actually one of the first public speakings recorded in the Bible of Jesus. So it was technically his first impression to the public, which is what makes it so important as his first impression.
Yeah, and if you go back, you can, if you have one of those Bibles with the red text is when Jesus speaks, you can go back and see that the only other times Jesus spoke was at his baptism and when the devil tempted him. So that's pretty cool. So it's really important that this first sermon and first speaking of Jesus was in Matthew, because during this time that Matthew was writing, he was writing to the people who were being oppressed by the Romans, and the Babylons and just all these people, and they were told that they had to serve them. And when they heard of the Messiah, they knew that this Messiah was going to deliver them from their evils and being oppressed. And so when they heard of Jesus doing these miracles, they were getting excited, and they were like, he could be the one, he could be special, he could deliver us. And then Jesus started doing something he had never done before, and he started to teach all of them at once. So I'll read 5:1-2 again for you. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and began to teach them.
So Matthew 4 tells us there were a lot of people, large multitudes of people at this point following Jesus, whether or not they were true believers or they weren't quite genuine. A good example of this would be Judas, who ended up betraying him in the end. But that was like the day they were kind of going to see what he was all about. You know, the Sermon on the Mount, that's when he was kind of establishing his like, what's the word I'm thinking of? He was trying
discipleship.
Like he was trying. It was like his first public appearance, like we said before. So it was like everyone was kind of just checking that to see what was kind of going on.
It was important.
It was very important. Oh, and so he told them. This is when he started saying this is when he started giving the Beatitudes to kind of try and relate to all the people that are being oppressed and looking for people to follow. So that's when he started with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."
Yeah, and that was Matthew 5:3.
So you would think being poor in spirit is a bad thing or something that you really don't want to be because you're like poor in spirit. But in actuality, what Jesus is saying here is those who are poor in spirit acknowledge that what they have to give God is, they don't have anything to give God except what God has given to them, which is what Jesus has said. Jesus has said, the first thing that he said to them was, those who recognize this are going to inherit the kingdom of God. And they're going to be, not only in the afterlife, but during this life, they're going to be blessed and they're going to be full of joy and happiness throughout their years.
So the next beatitude is Matthew 5:4, and it says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." This is kind of an oxymoron. Like, oh, so happy those who are mourning. Like, mourning is in like mourning a death and stuff. But there's a double meaning to this beatitude, and the first is the most obvious one, is that there is a day coming that God will take away our crying, no more tears, no more death, and he will come and he will just reap righteousness onto us. And the other meaning is not just an individual mourning, but it is a mourning for our nation and for our people as Christians. And the second meaning of the beatitude is when we are comforted by God, when we know that he is going to redeem our nation, that he is going to we are going to rejoice in the fact that God promised us reconciling everything in himself, that he will make everything new, and we can be blessed because we know that God is not done working in our lives yet.
One last bite of spaghetti.
Oh wait, no, I have my last one too. Hold on.
God, that's a huge bite.
Oh, I'm not gonna eat all the meat. Just a little bite.
So the third and last beatitude is in Matthew 5:5, and it's, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." And in all of these beatitudes, the word "for" that's in the middle of them all can actually be translated to "because." So another way to word this would be, "Oh, so happy are the meek, because there's a day coming where they will inherit the earth." So Jesus is not promising a one-time promise to the meek. It's a forever promise. The meek will inherit the earth. And you think of like an heir when you think of inheriting things, and you think, oh, I'm going to inherit this from my parents or this from my aunt. I'm an heir. And that's just a one-time inheritance. But what God is saying is, if you are meek, which we looked at the definition of meek, and it's quiet, gentle, submissive, you're submissive to God, he's going to let you inherit that kingdom of God, which is the ultimate gift.
Yeah, and in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talked about these Beatitudes, and he reached out to these people, and he said that the poor in spirit, this person understands who they are in the light of God and who God is, and they will be rewarded the kingdom of heaven. And the mourner, the one who understands that the world is not as it should be, will be rewarded comfort. They also understand what their place is in this world, And then that last person, the meek person, or the easily imposed on, that one person who takes a long, hard look at himself and fully realizes that he is no better than anyone else, they inherit the earth. And these first three Beatitudes all have to do with our attitudes and how we look at ourselves and our faith in our God. The poor in spirit have the right attitude and the understanding of who they are in relation to God. Those who mourn have their proper perspective of who they are in the world, and those meek have that proper grasp of who they are and where they stand in regard to other people around them.
This year, we want everyone, including ourselves and you guys, to have a blessed year. But just saying that and wanting that to happen, it's not going to happen just from us wanting it to happen. Just like how anything else in your life isn't going to happen just because you want it to. You have a certain responsibility to keep up in order for that to happen. And it's not necessarily that it's going to happen, even if you keep up with your responsibilities. But we can be blessed in the fact that we know what's coming. We know that one day we will inherit that kingdom of God, and we can hope for that and keep our hope steady for that.
Yeah, and I think that I want to be blessed, and she wants to be blessed, and I bet you guys want to be blessed too. And if you do, that Sermon of the Mount 2,000 years ago was meant for you. God was speaking to you, Jesus was speaking to you before he even knew you were a thing. Go first. So we have a little interview for us, and the first question for us to answer to you guys and for you guys to ponder about when we're done for your own answer, or answer amongst your small groups. Number one is, what is the most awkward first encounter you have had with someone? And I'll go first. One of the first times I ever spoke with my boss at the restaurant that I work at, he came up to me and he said, "Oh, you know Joe Timmerman, right?" And Joe went to the church, and I said, "Yeah, I just went on a retreat with him, and that was Great Wolf Lodge like 3 years ago." And he goes, "Oh, so you know him?" I was like, "Yeah, are you his dad?" And my manager said, "No, he works here."
And one that I had, my old job, I was one of like the assistant managers. I had never met him before, but the manager hired me, and it was one of my first days, and it was my first time working with him. And we were kind of going around asking, like, because everyone varied in age, and we were all like, "Oh, how old is everyone?" Because the first question came to me, "How old are you?" Since I was new or whatever. So they were all having me guess their ages, and it was like the assistant manager, and I was like, I'm really bad at guessing ages, so I was like, 32, and he was like, "I'm 21," and I was like, "Oh my god." So yeah, I quit. It was so awkward.
And then our second question is, what makes first impressions so important? Do you have an answer for that?
I mean, it's your first impression. You know, it's what people think about you for the rest of your relationship with that person. It's hard to come back from a bad first impression.
Yeah.
Like I said, I quit.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a time where you meet people and you're kind of like, this is this person. Like when you first meet them, that's kind of like all you think about. And then our third question is, what is the difference between the words blessed and blessed?
I'm gonna be honest with you guys.
We looked this up for a really long time.
And then we read the...
Yeah, so it took us a minute to learn that one. But we'll kind of answer it. In my opinion, I think the words are kind of like, blessed is someone who has already accepted God, or has already accepted being blessed with money or something like that. Where it's like, already happened
you're
to them.
so blessed.
Yeah. And so you have already been blessed. But blessed kind of means to me that you will be blessed in the future. Like, blessed are the ones who. So I need to do this in order to be blessed.
And I always think of it like, blessed is like, you need to do these things to be blessed. I almost think of these things. We're getting confused.
Good.
So, blessed is like, almost like, not necessarily, but like material things. Like, I've been blessed with a child. I've been blessed with a nice job. But blessed is almost like your, not personality, but just like the vibe. You know, you're so joyous. Like, you're gonna. Yep, it's a vibe.
Do you want to try again?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
I wouldn't do it any other way.
For coming to this week's youth group video. We miss you so much, and we can't wait to eventually see you. Bye.
Bye. Times.
All right. Gonna be the hardest part. Thank you for coming to this week's. Who does that?
I didn't do that.
I did. Oh.
After this, Scott's getting us ice cream.
Yes.
He doesn't know it. Scott, if you're at this point of the video, you succeeded.
You should text us.
Text us. This is a test.
You owe us $5. Okay. Why am I shaking?